The conference room felt smaller than usual. I stood at the front, laser pointer trembling slightly in my hand as the presentation slides glowed behind me. Victor Lang, my CEO, sat to my right with that practiced smile he wore during important meetings. Across the table, Marcus Bradley from Quantum Systems studied the screen, his expression unreadable. "So, Ms. Mills," Marcus began, leaning forward. "Walk me through the implementation timeline again." I opened my mouth to respond, but Victor's hand rose smoothly. "Actually, Marcus, I need to address something first." His voice carried that false warmth that always made my stomach twist. "I'm afraid Harper's oversight has put us in a difficult position." The room went silent. My throat closed. "What oversight?" Marcus asked, his tone sharpening. Victor's smile never wavered. "The pricing clause we discussed last month, it's missing from the proposal Harper submitted. This could have cost us significant revenue." Every eye in that boardroom turned to me. The air felt thick, suffocating. My palms went slick against the pointer. "We trusted you to handle this," Victor continued, voice dripping with manufactured disappointment. Then Marcus asked the question that changed everything. "Why wasn't this clause in your proposal, Mr. Lang?" "My name is Harper Mills. I'm 29 years old, and until 3 minutes ago, I thought I'd finally made it. I started at Lang Solutions 5 years earlier as an unpaid intern, making coffee and organizing files nobody else wanted to touch. I worked weekends. I stayed late fixing other people's mistakes. I learned every system, every client quirk, every shortcut that kept the company running smoothly." Victor noticed me after I salvaged a presentation he'd completely botched. Instead of thanking me privately, he announced it in the next team meeting, calling me his rising star. I felt proud then. Validated. I clawed my way up to account manager, handling increasingly complex deals while Victor took credit during quarterly reviews. He'd reference our team's success, while the board applauded him. I told myself it was normal. That's how corporate hierarchies worked. I stayed late on Tuesdays to prep his Friday presentations. I covered for his forgotten deadlines. I made him look brilliant, and in return, I got steady promotions and decent raises. I thought we had an understanding. I thought loyalty mattered. Looking back now, I realize how naive that sounds. 3 months earlier, I landed the Quantum Systems opportunity. It started with a cold email I sent to their VP of Operations, outlining how our software could revolutionize their supply chain management. Within 2 weeks, I had a meeting scheduled. Victor called me into his office the day before that first pitch. "This could be huge for us, Harper," he said, gesturing at the revenue projections on his screen. "Global partnership. Multi-year contract. The board's watching this one closely." He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. "I'm trusting you with this. Don't mess it up." The words felt like confidence and threat wrapped together. I worked 16-hour days perfecting that presentation. I studied Quantum's pain points, their competitors, their growth trajectory. When I walked into their headquarters, I knew that pitch better than my own address. Marcus Bradley loved it. He said our approach was refreshingly thorough. He wanted to move forward immediately. Victor joined the second meeting, calling me his secret weapon, in front of Marcus. I felt proud again. Validated again. That pride should have worried me. Strange things started happening after that second meeting. Emails I'd sent would vanish from my outbox. Slides I'd finalized the night before would be accidentally deleted from the shared drive. I'd arrive at morning meetings to find Victor presenting information I'd compiled, with no mention of my name. One afternoon, Sylvia from accounting pulled me aside in the break room. "Be careful," she whispered, glancing toward Victor's office. "He has a pattern." "Pattern of what?" She hesitated, stirring her coffee slowly. Using people when the board's paying attention. Then when things go south, someone else takes the fall. I laughed it off. Victor had always been supportive of me. He promoted me twice. He called me his secret weapon. Thanks for looking out, I told Sylvia. But I think I'm fine. She looked at me with something like pity. I hope you're right. I pushed her warning aside, too focused on closing the quantum deal to worry about office politics. The contract was almost finalized. Marcus had verbally committed. Everything was falling into place. I was desperate to believe this time would be different. The credit theft started small. During a status update with Quantum's technical team, I was explaining our data migration approach when Victor suddenly interrupted. What Harper means, he said smoothly, is that we'll implement a phased rollout strategy that minimizes operational disruption. That was exactly what I'd just said. Word for word. But he rephrased it like he'd thought of it himself. The Quantum team nodded appreciatively at Victor. He smiled that polished smile. Exactly, Harper. Good work supporting my vision. My knuckles whitened under the conference table. I forced my face into something resembling a smile, but inside, something shifted. The way he said, supporting, felt deliberately diminishing. After the meeting, I cornered him in the hallway. Victor, you just repeated what I'd already explained. He looked genuinely confused. Did I? I wasn't trying to steal your thunder, Harper. We're a team. Sometimes I just need to clarify technical points for clients. He patted my shoulder. Don't be so sensitive. You're doing great. I watched him walk away, doubt creeping in like cold water. 2 weeks before the final contract signing, Victor's assistant forwarded me a document. Victor needs you to approve this revised contract before tomorrow's meeting, the email read. I opened the PDF and started reading. Most of it matched what Marcus and I had negotiated, but buried in Section 7 was a new clause. It redirected 20% of implementation fees to a consulting company I'd never heard of, Apex Advisory Solutions. Something felt wrong. I researched Apex. The website was generic. The contact information led to a virtual office. But the LLC registration showed Victor as the founding member. He'd inserted a clause that funneled money to his own company. I scheduled a meeting immediately. Victor met me with his usual calm demeanor. This Apex clause, I said, pointing at my laptop screen. Why is it here? He barely glanced at it. Standard industry practice, Harper. Implementation always involves third-party consultants. But you own Apex. Which means we can ensure quality control. He smiled. Trust me. I've been doing this longer than you. Against every instinct screaming at me, I approved it. He was the CEO. He had 15 years more experience. I trusted him. The deal started falling apart gradually, then suddenly. Marcus began asking odd questions during our weekly calls. Who approved the timeline changes? Why does this cost breakdown differ from last week's version? I'd scramble to check my files, only to find discrepancies I hadn't created. Numbers would be different. Dates would shift. Entire paragraphs would be rewritten. Victor assured me it was normal pre-contract jitters. Clients always get nervous before big commitments, he said. Just stay calm and keep them confident. But I noticed he'd started having separate calls with Marcus. Calls I wasn't invited to. When I asked about them, he'd wave dismissively. Just high-level strategy stuff. Nothing you need to worry about. I worried anyway. One evening, I stayed late reviewing email chains. In a forwarded thread I'd been copied on by mistake, I found messages between Victor and Marcus. Victor was subtly undermining me, mentioning my limited experience with contracts this size, and his need to closely supervise her work. My hands shook as I read. He was systematically making me look incompetent. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to forward those emails to HR. Instead, I said nothing. I was too busy fixing the chaos to see the trap closing. The night before the final presentation, I did one last review of the contract I'd be presenting to Marcus and his executive team. My stomach dropped. The pricing clause we'd negotiated, the one guaranteeing quantum 15% savings in year one, was missing. Completely gone. In its place was vague language about market rate adjustments. I frantically searched my sent folder. The version I'd emailed Marcus 3 days ago had included that clause. I had screenshots. I had the PDF. But the version now in our shared system was different. And according to the metadata, I'd uploaded it yesterday at 11 p.m. I'd been home asleep at 11 p.m. I called Victor immediately, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. Victor, the contract version changed. Someone edited it under my name. His voice was smooth, almost bored. Harper, you're exhausted. You probably updated it and forgot. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. I didn't. We'll sort it out in the morning. Don't stress yourself out over nothing. The line went dead. I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen, reality crystallizing with horrible clarity. He'd set me up. Which brought me back to that conference room. Marcus Bradley staring at Victor. Victor's smile faltering just slightly. I'm sorry. Victor said, his composure cracking at the edges. Marcus pulled out his tablet, swiping through documents. You just blamed Ms. Mills for a missing clause. But the contract version I received yesterday has a different name in the metadata. Your name, Mr. Lang. The room went completely still. And, Marcus continued, his tone cooling, the previous version Harper sent me 3 days ago included the pricing guarantee we negotiated. But this new version removes it entirely and adds a clause directing funds to a company you apparently own. Victor's face drained of color. I think, Marcus said slowly, someone needs to explain what's actually happening here. My vision blurred. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every eye in the room shifted from me to Victor. He'd framed me. Publicly. Deliberately. And somehow, impossibly, it was unraveling right in front of us. Marcus closed his tablet. I think we need to postpone this meeting until we understand what's going on. He framed me. The meeting ended in stunned silence. Marcus and his team left without another word. Victor stormed out immediately after, his phone already pressed to his ear. I stood alone in that conference room, my presentation still glowing uselessly on the screen behind me. In the hallway, co-workers avoided eye contact. Sylvia touched my arm briefly as she passed, but said nothing. By the time I reached my desk, the whispers had already started. An hour later, HR called. Just a routine review, they said. Nothing to worry about. Everything about their tone said otherwise. I went home early, sitting in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could move. My phone buzzed with a message from Victor. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Get some rest. As if I could rest. As if my entire career hadn't just imploded in front of the biggest client we'd ever had. That night, I replayed every moment. Every warning sign I'd ignored. Sylvia's caution. The missing emails. The credit theft. The separate calls with Marcus. Victor had planned this. Carefully. Methodically. And I'd walked straight into it. But sitting there in my dark apartment, something shifted inside me. No tears. No panic. Just cold, clear focus. I wasn't going down like this. Not without proof. Not without a fight. I started collecting evidence the next morning. Every email I'd ever sent Victor got forwarded to my personal account. Every document I'd created got downloaded to an external drive. I took screenshots of timestamps, metadata, version histories, anything that could prove my version of events. I worked methodically, carefully, documenting every discrepancy between what I'd created and what had appeared in the system. At the office, I kept my expression neutral. Professional. When Victor passed my desk, I smiled. When colleagues asked how I was holding up, I said, "Fine, just clarifying some details." Inside, I was building a case. Every interaction became evidence. Every conversation got quietly recorded on my phone, legally, with notification. Every lie Victor told got catalogued. Sylvia watched me with knowing eyes. She understood what I was doing. "Be smart," she whispered one afternoon. "He's done this before. He knows how to make people disappear." I met her gaze steadily. Not this time. The audience watching wouldn't see desperation. They'd see strategy. Calm, deliberate, unstoppable strategy. Victor had taught me how corporate power worked. Now I'd teach him what happened when you underestimated the person holding everything together. 3 days after the disastrous presentation, Sylvia invited me to lunch off-site. We drove to a small cafe across town, far from anyone who might recognize us. "There were others," she said quietly, stirring her soup without eating. "Before you." I leaned forward. "Others who got blamed." She nodded. "Thomas left 2 years ago. Same thing, big project, something went wrong, Victor pointed fingers, and suddenly Thomas was not a good fit. Then Rebecca last year. She tried to fight it, but Victor had already rewritten the narrative." My jaw tightened. Why didn't anyone warn me? Some tried. "You remember when Marcus from IT pulled you aside last year?" I did. He'd said something vague about watching my back. I'd assumed he meant general office politics. Thomas went quietly, Sylvia continued. Took the severance, signed the NDA, disappeared. Rebecca got angrier, which made it easier for Victor to paint her as unstable. HR sided with him every time. She finally looked up at me. "You're different though. You're being strategic." That scares him more than anger ever could. I absorbed this information, recalibrating my approach. If Victor had a pattern, that pattern could be proven. And patterns meant I wasn't alone. "Not this time," I whispered again, more to myself than Sylvia. For days after everything fell apart, my phone rang. Unknown number. Harper Mills. The voice was familiar. "This is Marcus Bradley. I hope it's okay that I'm calling your personal line." My pulse quickened. "Of course. How did you get this number?" "You listed it on your initial outreach email. I keep thorough notes." He paused. "Can we talk off the record?" I stepped outside, finding a quiet corner of the parking lot. "I'm listening." "Victor's explanation didn't sit right with me," Marcus said. "The timeline he presented doesn't match what I observed working with you. And frankly, the quality of work dramatically declined the moment he became more involved." I chose my words carefully. "What are you asking, Marcus?" "I'm asking for your version. No corporate spin. Just facts." I took a breath. Then I told him. The changed contracts. The missing emails. The apex clause that benefited Victor personally. I stuck to verifiable facts, avoiding accusations or emotional appeals. Marcus listened without interrupting. "Send me documentation," he said finally. "Everything you have. I need to present this to my board, and I want to make sure I'm not making a mistake by walking away from this deal entirely." I promised to compile it. When the call ended, I stood in that parking lot, staring at my phone. Someone finally believed me. That weekend, I did something slightly risky. I accessed the company's shared drive from home, using my still active credentials. Victor had been careless about security, assuming no one would think to look deeper. In a folder labeled Executive Strategy, I found drafts. Dozens of them. Proposals I'd written, but edited to include Victor's personal contacts and companies. Memos outlining how to reposition credit for board presentations. Email threads where he discussed managing account managers who got too visible. My name appeared in several. Harper's doing excellent work on quantum, but we need to ensure board perception remains focused on executive leadership. Another message, dated 2 weeks before the big presentation: if quantum stalls, we'll need a clear narrative about accountability. He'd planned my downfall before anything had even gone wrong. I copied everything to an encrypted cloud drive. Then I took screenshots of the folder structure, the dates, the metadata, proof that these files existed in executive-only spaces I technically shouldn't access but had legitimate reason to given my work. The tension mounted. I had ammunition now. Real, documented proof. But timing mattered. I couldn't just unleash this randomly. I needed the perfect moment. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Philip Torres, our CFO. Philip had a reputation for being fair-minded and intolerant of financial irregularities. I need to discuss something sensitive, I told him. About the quantum contract. We met in his office, door closed. I walked him through the Apex advisory clause, showing him the company registration with Victor's name. Then I showed him the contract versions, how the clause appeared without proper board approval. Philip's expression hardened. This wasn't disclosed to the finance committee. I didn't think so, I said carefully. I wanted to bring it to your attention before making assumptions. He studied the documents for several long minutes. Harper, I'm going to need to conduct an audit. This could take time. Can you be patient? I nodded. I can be patient. But I need you to know that Victor's already positioned me as the scapegoat if anything goes wrong. Philip's jaw tightened. I'll be thorough. And discreet. As I left his office, I felt the shift. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I'd turned Victor's own weapons against him: careful documentation, strategic alliances, patience. The rocks stay steady while the river rushes past. I didn't know where I'd heard that phrase, but it felt true. I could be patient. I could be steady. And I could wait for the perfect moment to let everything collapse around him. Over the next week, I noticed Victor changing. Small things at first. He'd check his phone constantly during meetings, frowning at messages. He'd snap at assistants over minor mistakes. His usual polished confidence developed cracks. The quantum deal remained frozen. Marcus had gone completely silent, neither confirming nor canceling. That uncertainty clearly ate at Victor. He thrived on control, and control was slipping. Meanwhile, I maintained perfect composure. I showed up on time, completed assignments flawlessly, smiled politely in the hallways. I became invisible in the best possible way, competent but unthreatening. Victor tried cornering me once. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone falsely sympathetic. "I know the quantum situation has been stressful." "I'm fine," I replied evenly. "Just focused on supporting the team however I can." Something in my calmness unsettled him. He studied my face, searching for anger or fear, finding neither. "Good," he said slowly. "That's good." He walked away looking less certain than when he'd approached. Sylvia caught my eye from across the office and gave a tiny nod of approval. She understood. When you're building a case against someone, you don't show your cards. You just keep collecting them. On Thursday morning, something interesting happened. Screenshots began circulating through the office. Not obviously, just subtle forwards, people accidentally leaving printouts near the copier, images appearing in group chats that immediately got deleted but not before everyone had seen them. Victor's messages. The ones where he discussed managing perception and repositioning credit. The ones where my name appeared alongside phrases like limited experience and needs close supervision. No one knew where they came from. I certainly didn't share them directly. But information has a way of spreading when people are ready to see it. Victor called an impromptu staff meeting that afternoon. "It's come to my attention that confidential communications have been leaked," he announced, his voice tight. "This is a serious violation of company policy. If anyone has information about the source, I expect you to come forward." Silence. People studied their shoes. I sat in the back, expression neutral, taking notes like I always did during meetings. Victor's eyes swept the room, landing on me for just a moment. I met his gaze calmly, then looked back down at my notepad. I didn't need to say anything. My silence spoke volumes. After the meeting, my phone buzzed. A text from Philip Torres, "Board meeting scheduled for Monday. Your presence requested as observer." Monday arrived with gray skies and unusual tension in the office. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in the executive conference room, the big one with the mahogany table and windows overlooking downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early, taking a seat in the corner as instructed. Board members filtered in, greeting each other with subdued professionalism. Victor entered last, confident stride, expensive suit, ready to perform. He didn't notice me at first, too focused on arranging his presentation materials. Then Philip Torres stood up. "Before we begin regular business, we need to address the quantum systems contract situation." Victor's expression remained smooth. "Of course. I've prepared a full report on." "I have some questions first," Philip interrupted, pulling out a folder. "Specifically about financial disclosures and contract modifications." Victor's smile tightened slightly. "Happy to clarify anything." Philip began reading excerpts from emails. Victor's emails. The ones discussing credit management and narrative control. With each quote, Victor's face grew paler. "These communications suggest a pattern of misrepresenting employee contributions," Philip said. "And this Apex advisory clause represents an undisclosed financial conflict of interest." Victor tried to respond, but Philip held up a hand. "We're not finished. Marcus Bradley from Quantum Systems has joined us by video call. He has questions about the contract modifications." A screen lit up. Marcus appeared, expression grave. "Mr. Lang, can you explain why the contract I received last week was substantially different from what Ms. Mills and I negotiated?" Victor's composure finally cracked. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, started to speak, then stopped. "There were necessary revisions," he began. "Strategic adjustments that—" Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Strategic adjustments that removed terms favorable to my company and added clauses benefiting your personal consulting firm." The board members exchanged glances. "If Harper was responsible for these problems," Marcus continued, "why does the metadata on the modified contract show your name as the last editor? Why did the version she originally sent me include all the negotiated terms, while your version removed them?" The room went completely silent. You could hear the ventilation system humming. Victor opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I was overseeing the process. Making sure everything was correct. By making it incorrect? Marcus asked. By adding undisclosed fees that would have cost us significantly more than we agreed. One board member leaned forward. Victor, is there something you need to tell us? Victor's mask shattered. His face flushed. This is ridiculous. I've led this company for 8 years. My judgment is being questioned because of one administrative error. Multiple errors, Philip corrected. all pointing to a deliberate pattern of misrepresentation and self-dealing. I sat silently in my corner, watching everything unfold. I hadn't spoken a word. I didn't need to. The truth was doing all the work. The board voted to suspend Victor pending a full investigation. The decision took less than 5 minutes once all the evidence was laid out. Victor gathered his materials in rigid silence, his movements sharp with barely controlled anger. As he walked past my corner, he stopped, turning to face me directly. "You did this," he said quietly, voice shaking. I met his gaze steadily. "I documented what happened. The rest was your own choices." His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might explode, but he just shook his head and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The board chair turned to me. "Ms. Mills, thank you for your patience throughout this process. We apologize for the situation you were put in." "I appreciate that," I replied. "We'd like you to continue managing the quantum relationship, if you're willing." Directly, without interference. Before I could respond, Marcus spoke from the screen. "Actually, I'd like to make a proposal. Would you be open to discussing a senior role at Quantum? Leading our vendor relations division?" The room fell quiet again. Everyone looked at me. I took a breath. The offer was tempting. But there was something I needed to finish first. "Can I think about it?" I asked Marcus. He smiled slightly. "Of course. Take your time." I had won. Completely. But somehow, winning didn't feel the way I'd imagined. The next few days were surreal. Co-workers who'd avoided me now stopped by with whispered apologies. I should have said something. I knew something was wrong. "You handled that incredibly well." Sylvia brought me coffee without asking. "Proud of you," she said simply. The HR director scheduled a formal meeting to review my employment record. "We want to ensure you feel supported moving forward," she said carefully, which I understood to mean, "Please don't sue us." Marcus followed up with a detailed offer letter. Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships. Significant salary increase. Equity package. Reporting directly to their COO. It was everything I'd worked toward. Everything I deserved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving immediately would be wrong. Victor had created chaos that affected dozens of people. Projects were stalled. Clients were nervous. Junior staff who'd relied on my mentorship were anxious about their futures. I decided to stay for 90 days. Long enough to stabilize things, transition relationships properly, and leave the place better than I'd found it. "That's very generous," Marcus said when I explained my timeline. "The offer will be waiting when you're ready." Generosity wasn't quite right. It was responsibility. Victor had taught me that leadership meant taking credit for success. I'd learned that real leadership meant taking responsibility for the mess. The board's investigation concluded 6 weeks later. The findings were damning. Victor had systematically taken credit for subordinate work, manipulated financial disclosures, and created a hostile environment that drove away talented employees. They terminated him with cause. No severance beyond legal minimums. No glowing recommendations. Just a quiet exit and a terse press release about pursuing other opportunities. I received the news in an email from Philip Torres. "The board wants you to know that your professionalism throughout this process was instrumental in reaching the truth," he wrote. "Thank you." That afternoon, Victor tried calling me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Harper, please. I know things got messy, but we can work this out. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Say you misinterpreted my intentions. I have a family. I have a mortgage. Please." I listened to the message twice. Then I deleted it. He'd said those exact words to me after the boardroom disaster: "We can work this out." But he'd meant I should stay quiet while he controlled the narrative. Now he wanted me to lie for him. To save him the way I'd saved so many of his projects. I texted back a single sentence: "You taught me everything I needed to know about loyalty." Then I blocked his number. Some lessons are more valuable than others. On my final day at Lang Solutions, I arrived early to pack my desk. 5 years of work, 5 years of late nights and saved projects and invisible labor, all fitting into 3 cardboard boxes. The new interim CEO stopped by. "We hate to lose you," she said. "Are you sure we can't convince you to stay? Name your terms." I smiled. "I appreciate that. But it's time for something new." She nodded, understanding. "Well, you're leaving us in good shape. The quantum deal is back on track. Your transition documentation is remarkably thorough. And half the junior staff has already asked if they can use you as a reference." We shook hands. I carried my boxes to my car, taking one last look at the building. No bitterness. No regret. Just quiet satisfaction. Victor had tried to bury me. Instead, he'd given me exactly what I needed: clarity about my own worth, evidence of my capabilities, and the confidence to demand better. 3 days later, I started at Quantum Systems. My own office. My own team. My own decisions. Marcus greeted me personally on my first morning. "Welcome aboard. We're glad you're here." The client who'd asked that perfect question in the boardroom, who'd seen through Victor's lies and refused to let me take the fall, was now my partner in building something new. Perfect symmetry. 6 months into my role at Quantum, I was leading our biggest vendor review when my assistant knocked on my office door. "You have a visitor. Says it's urgent." Victor stood in the lobby, looking smaller than I remembered. His expensive suit had been replaced with something off the rack. The polished confidence was gone. "Harper. Thank you for seeing me." I didn't invite him to sit. "What do you want, Victor?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm applying for positions. Having trouble getting interviews. I was hoping you might." "Might what?" "Provide a reference." He nodded eagerly. "You were always fair. Professional. People respect you. One good word could." "Let me understand," I interrupted. "You publicly blamed me for your failures, tried to steal credit for my work, and set me up to take the fall for your financial misconduct. And now you want me to help you." His face flushed. "I made mistakes. But we worked together for 5 years. That has to count for something." I studied him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to be generous, to prove I was better than him. But generosity and enabling weren't the same thing. "No," I said simply. "Harper, please. You had every opportunity to do the right thing. You chose differently every single time." I walked to the lobby door, holding it open. "Goodbye, Victor." He left without another word. I watched him cross the parking lot, shoulders hunched, everything about him diminished. I didn't feel triumphant. Just done. A year after the boardroom disaster, I was interviewed for a leadership profile in a major business magazine. They wanted to discuss my rapid rise at Quantum Systems and the unusual circumstances of my departure from Lang Solutions. "What would you say to young professionals facing similar situations?" the journalist asked. I thought carefully before answering. Document everything. Stay professional even when others aren't. Build alliances with people who value integrity. And remember that your reputation is built on what you do when no one's forcing you to do the right thing. Any regrets? Only that I didn't trust my instincts sooner. The warning signs were there. I just wanted so badly to believe loyalty would be rewarded. The article published 2 weeks later. My phone exploded with messages, former co-workers, industry contacts, people I'd never met sharing their own stories of toxic workplaces and hard-won victories. One message stood out. From Sylvia, saw the article. Perfectly said. The whole office is talking about it. People are starting to speak up now. You started something. That evening, I walked out of Quantum's headquarters as the sun set over the city. My team had just landed a partnership that would transform our entire division. Marcus had announced my promotion to VP that morning. Everything I'd worked toward was finally, genuinely mine. They'd blamed me for losing everything. Turns out, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I got revenge. Not because Victor suffered. But because I finally learned what I was actually worth, and refused to accept less ever again. Justice served. Peace earned. Future secured.